Good morning, comrades. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning Comrade. Jeff and Robert here on the show. We also have very special guests. I think he heard that we had Jack on recently, and he had to come on twice to just kind of like try and like jump out, getting ahead by the nose. That's right, folks. MarkAlain Dery is back. What is up, MarkAlain?
Thank you guys so much for having me again. It's been a rough day today. We're recording this on, I don't even know, July 3rd.
July 3rd.
Yeah.
Day before Lee Greenwood Day.
Yeah, the day before. I'm going to start sitting Shiva starting tomorrow. So
Okay.
that's how I celebrate the 4th. So I sit Shiva for the death of society that occurred on July 3rd today. But anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I want to be positive here. In a negative environment.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do our best here. Well, you know what? There is a lot to be a positive about, right? So, I mean, one of the things, and this is the biggest victory that you can possibly imagine. Sure, as of recording day, Donald Trump got a bill through Congress, but it wasn't the big beautiful bill because our hero, the champion of champions,
we will win.
The number one, the guy who is, coming up and taking Taco Trump down, Chuck Schumer. He made sure that it was not called officially the big beautiful bill, so we're saved, folks.
Let me ask you guys, just before we carry on, I just want to be somewhat petty for a quick second. Okay. Do we think that was like a good troll, or are we we just like that was just completely like a waste of time, or that's
neoliberalism doing what neoliberalism does?
Okay, it's like literally the whole point behind that was, hey, we're gonna come in here and we're gonna do like it's one of those things that like you are just going to try and annoy the person that you're not going to beat. You're going to lose. It's why Hakeem Jeffries decided to like just yap for 8.5 hours or whatever the hell it was and get himself like some kind of accolade and his triumphant, like his doomed attempt to try and stop this bill. But at least he, the most virtuous of the Democrats, steps up and does his part. And, sure, Medicaid is still going to get cut by, millions and millions of dollars. And sure, ICE is going to have a bigger budget than the Russian military. And sure, billionaires are going to get like huge tax cuts and really reorganize their society. So where they're even more on top than they've ever been. But he won the longest yapping contest in the House history. So everybody wins.
And let me also just kind of like add a spit shine to that these guys, both him, Jeffries and Booker, those guys are wearing, by the way, external urinary catheters. Mm-hmm. So they wear what is a condom cath that fits over their phallus, and then it runs a tube down their leg, and then that is where they're able to collect urine, because it is physically impossible to stand up there for 8 hours in Jeffrey's case, and then in Booker's case was what, like 25 hours?
Yeah, I mean, at least Strom Thurmond, sure, historic racist or whatever. At least he had a piss bucket. He had to have.
He had a piss bucket?
I didn't know. Oh.
Yeah, no, these guys are wearing external catheters, so I want to like, I want to just kind of add that element of like Like I want to create their level of humanity because we're all humans and we all still have to do that.
Yeah.
No, that was just if anything, like what they said that the vote was going to happen at 4:30, so they were going to so he delayed the vote.
Oh
Big
no,
deal.
they had it at 6 then instead. Oh no.
Yeah, so like big deal. Like what ended up passing today is something that will change society. I mean, it will. The impacts of it we can't even begin to fathom. And of course, Jeff, I don't want to like take over the show. So
lay it out.
You're the doctor. Go.
I am a Medicaid physician. I've been a Medicaid physician my entire career. I've never been in private practice. I've always worked for the public. Always. I've always worked for the public. That my entire career has been predicated. For those of you know that Jeff, well, all three of us are from New Orleans. We all live in New Orleans and Charity Hospital. I'm sure everybody's is familiar with. That is the second public hospital. I think Cook County Hospital was the first. I think Charity was the second. And then where I trained, which is Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital, was the third public hospital. So where I did my residency training was at Case Western Reserve at the Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital. There's a private hospital you can choose to go to. I never did. Same thing here in New Orleans. When I started working at Tulane, I did my training at Tulane. I always worked within the charity system. You could choose if you want to be at the private hospital or the public hospital. So I'm just laying down kind of who I am and what I have stood for my entire career, especially as an infectious diseases doctor. As an infectious disease physician, my job primarily, not exclusively, but primarily is working with people who are living with HIV. In a city like New Orleans, we are number 2 or number 3 of the highest cases of HIV. Now, let's be clear. We're a small city, so we're not talking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A city like Chicago or Houston or New York City or San Francisco or LA.
You're talking percentages.
We're talking percentages. We're talking rates, basically, is what we're talking about. Rates of new cases. Okay, that's called incidence. As prevalence. Prevalence is where you're counting people 1, 2, 3, 4. We're talking about a rate of new diagnoses. We have the highest rate of new diagnoses. Miami's always number 1. New Orleans is number 2, and Baton Rouge is number 3. Wow. They're in the South, and you can see poverty, immigration, communities of color, high communities of color, high.
Would it be out of line to say that inequality is a public health hazard?
Yes, that has been shown a number of times. There are a number of studies that have actually shown that inequality and racism, let's just be straight up forward, racism is considered a public health emergency. In fact, the dean of the school of Tulane School of Public Health is actually kind of a leader in publishing those studies. He's Dean Levine, who's really done some amazing work in that. But
that's a good
Dean Levine, yes. But Thomas Levine, really, he's done some amazing work. And Dave Roston actually edited and his documentary. On the work that he's done. Dave
shout out to Roston. We love
shout out to Roston. So the bottom line is that in places like New Orleans where we have high rates of HIV, a majority, if not almost exclusively, all of my patients are on Medicaid. And one of the things that we've always tried to kind of hide from politicians is that the Ryan White program. Do you remember Ryan White? Remember Ryan White? Ryan White was this little boy in the 80s. Like Reagan would never say the words HIV. He did not say HIV until 1988. The last year of his presidency, when a little white boy, because there's 4 H's of HIV, and those 4 H's are homosexual, heroin, Haitian. That's where a lot of the racism came in. Because a lot of the HIV we got came directly from Haiti, and that was because of sex trade and all that stuff. And that's where a lot of the racism and stigma of HIV came in. And then lastly, hemophilia. Those are the 4 H's of HIV that we would always talk about in the 80s. Okay.
And it's obviously crossover. It's not like separate circles. It's a Venn diagram.
Oh, it's a huge Venn diagram. Of course. And it's not exclusive. You had a lot, especially today, you have a lot of women. Black women are the highest rates of heterosexual individuals who are most at risk for HIV. But the bottom line is that it wasn't until you had somebody like Reagan who actually saw that there was a little 15-year-old boy who got HIV from a blood transfusion because he's hemophiliac. Let me remind you what hemophilia is. Hemophilia is that you can't stop bleeding. So if you cut yourself shaving or you're playing football and you clock your head or whatever, there are no platelets that can stop the bleeding. If you've ever cut yourself bleeding, or if you ever cut yourself and you start seeing bleeding, you put some pressure on it, you'll notice later there'll be like a raised bruise of dried blood. That dried blood is basically comprised of or was created as a result of something called platelets. Hemophiliacs don't have platelets, so they could quite literally bleed to death. And so what happened was that the blood was not cleared or was not evaluated in the 80s. That's a whole other scandal. The CDC was telling the Reagan administration that they needed to be on the look for that. They didn't do that. And then obviously you had a whole generation of hemophiliacs that have HIV, which is really quite incredible. And there are some people who even think, who's the guy who ran Fox News? Ailes, Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes is likely to have been a hemophiliac and also likely to have had HIV. I think we've talked about this. I think Jeff, I think you and I may have talked about this. I don't know if it was on my shows or yours, but Roger Ailes likely had HIV. Anyway, that's a supposition because he was a hemophiliac. Anyway, so it wasn't until this little 15-year-old boy, then out comes Elton John, out comes out like Michael Jackson, out comes out the entire the pop culture to support him and Reagan is coming out because he wasn't gay, he wasn't Haitian, he wasn't a heroin user. And what happened was those monies. So this boy, Ron White, died. And then after he died, there was a collective guilt in 1992. There was something called the Ryan White Act that was created. That Ryan White Act protected people living with HIV. And we single-handedly saved millions and millions of lives. And this is separate.
How did it protect them?
Because there was because people living with HIV typically are poor. And this is how we're getting to the Medicaid. Now we're kind of sliding into how Medicaid, because these individuals with HIV are still at higher risk and are still at higher risk and engage in kind of riskier behaviors, not exclusively. I'm not talking in totalities. We're talking percentages, obviously. But you're still looking at a community that is at a greater level. There's more poverty in the HIV community than in the general community. Let's put it that way. And so you're also looking at people that could never get insurance, because in those days there was pre-existing conditions, if you can remember that. And quote me, hear me today, quote me later. Okay. Pre-existing conditions will come back. The health insurance will lobby these MFers and they will get pre-existing conditions back in again. Just FYI.
It's open season on our healthcare system right now. Yes. I mean, we really are in a situation. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but because of this attack, and we can circle back in just a second. But we are in a situation where we're seeing the healthcare system crumble before our very eyes. And, I hate to say it over and over again, but the case before something like Medicare for all is more clear and more needed than ever. Before we respond to that, I do need a pause for station ID. You're listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, Jeff Robert, and MarkAlain here on the show.
So just to kind of just wrap this up real quickly, because I don't want to spend the entire hour speaking about HIV, but what essentially happened is that Ryan White also, even in the early 90s, protects and also covers people who are undocumented individuals. Okay. So people who are undocumented are also covered under what's called the Ryan-White Care Act. Okay. Now the Ryan-White Care Act was protected from 92 to 2002, and then 2002 to something like 2015. And then it lost its protection. So during those years, nobody could ever touch it. In other words, when they were looking for money, they couldn't go into that pot of money to get it. Now it's completely, it's completely exposed right now. What did those monies do? What those monies did was, because people could not get insurance, it covered them for their medical care, which in those days was much more expensive because there was also a lot more problems associated with HIV. But now we've got everybody on single tablet regimens, one pill once a day, and people are much healthier than they ever were on with HIV. Now, what happened was, once the Affordable Care Act became a thing, everybody moved off of Ryan-White, except for individuals that were undocumented. They still stuck with the Ryan-White program because they could not get Medicaid, because Medicaid can't provide, federal funding cannot provide funding for undocumented individuals. Everybody moved over to Medicaid. So now all of I would say those that are undocumented, I would say 25% of my patients are probably undocumented. So 75% of my patients all moved over to Medicaid. They are all going to lose their Medicaid. And now you start telling me what happens when people living with HIV don't have their medications. Well, I can tell you, because USAID, and I think we talked about this the last time I was on, we were talking about, as of probably 4 weeks ago, the New York Times did a comprehensive study in which they showed was, as of 4 weeks ago, and I'm sure this number is much higher, 300,000 people have since died of HIV-related complications.
Oh my God.
200,000 of them were children as a result of cutting USAID. So if anyone talks about welcoming Musk back into the fold because now all of a sudden he's got a hate boner for Trump, no.
We're talking to you, Near Tandon.
No. Like, not at all. Just because all of a sudden, like, remember, as Jeff and I were talking before we went on screen, he is supporting the ADF, right? So, like, just to kind of go over what happened today, the fact that we now have, it's unbelievable, the number, $800 billion is going to be cut. And the way they did it, these evil geniuses did it so that these cuts don't get felt until after the midterms, if there's even a midterm, right? $800 billion. We already had the first hospital closed today in a rural part of
Nebraska.
Where was it?
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Yeah.
And it sort of closed because it essentially projected that when these Medicaid cuts do go into effect, they are going to not be able to sustain operations. So we do have a for-profit healthcare system, and it's a for-profit operation. They're seeing the future here, and the only way out for this hospital is to shut down. That's the only way they can do it without losing their shirts. And I mean, that is a logical position. It sucks that that's the case, but that's one less hospital in rural Nebraska.
Hold on, that's going to happen. The estimation is something like upwards to 700 to 800 hospitals, and I think, to be honest with you, I think that's a conservative estimate, because like Medicaid, especially in Louisiana, where we are, in Louisiana, like the entire state runs off of Medicaid. Like there's just like, people here just don't have insurance. Certainly the people that I'm seeing, again, I am a Medicaid doctor, so I also, have a huge bias. I work for a public hospital. So but it is all Medicaid. And once those Medicaid cuts start coming, you're going to start to see hospitals start folding. Now, the hospital I'm going to work at is going to be safe because it's part of a larger corporation, and there's a huge, it's a nonprofit, and there's
an endowment there.
Where there's an endowment, and that's not to say that jobs aren't going to be lost. No question. Jobs are going to be lost.
And a lot of very concrete
case managers are going to be cut. But the thing that I want everybody to understand, one is, once people's Medicaid is cut, they're probably going to change the EMTALA laws. So what's EMTALA?
What is
EMTALA is the it's emergency basically it's a law that came about in the early 2000s. And what happened was there was a lady, I think she may have been undocumented. I can't say for 100%, but she was a pregnant woman who showed up at a hospital, and she was getting ready to deliver a baby. And at the ER, they did a wallet biopsy. A wallet biopsy is just a fancy, way of saying they checked to see if she had insurance. She didn't have insurance, and the ER turned her away.
Jesus Christ.
She went to another hospital. She didn't make it. I think she hemorrhaged. I think her and certainly I think her baby passed away because she got turned away from that emergency room. From that came this law called EMTALA. EMTALA basically means
Emergency
you can
Medical
never
Treatment and Labor Act.
So there you go. There's the L is labor, right? So certainly not pregnant. And that was like 2000. What year was it? 2002?
In 1986, Congress enacted the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act to ensure public access to emergency services regardless of ability to pay. In Section 1867 of the Social Security Act imposes specific obligations on Medicare participating hospitals that offer emergency services to provide a medical screening when a service is made for examination or treatment or emergency medical condition, including active labor, regardless of an individual's ability to pay.
So I predict that they're going to probably strike that down.
Jeez. Okay. So like hospitals can just tell you, if you don't have insurance, you're just gonna die.
Well, think about it. Now, think about it. I know this is not going to come natural for the three of us, but think about it from a capitalist perspective. If you're a CEO and your job is to keep the lights on, and you've got X amount of people for whom you need to make payroll every 2 weeks, like are you going to be able to take all? Because let's say somebody comes in and they have a hot belly, like they have an appendix or whatever the case may be, they may rack up a bill of several $100,000. And if that's not paid for, that's got to come from somewhere. And as we are seeing that we are entering a time where the hyper capitalism is starting to take precedent over people. And I mean, we're seeing what's happening in Florida with what was it, alligator Auschwitz?
Yeah.
Yes, alligator Auschwitz. And now
Gators Daily is not happy about that, by the way.
Who's not happy?
Gators Daily.
It's
a Twitter. Yeah, it's a very deep cut joke.
Got it.
Sorry, Doc.
Yeah, that's all right. But let me just say, once people start showing up to hospitals and they are not insured, all bets are off. We're going to start seeing, it's going to be like dominoes. The dominoes are going to start tumbling down. One hits the other, and I will say during Hurricane Ida, which happened in August 29th, which is the Hurricane Katrina. Were you here for Ida, Jeff, or had you left already?
Ida?
Yeah,
I was here.
You were here. Okay. Yeah. So that was the Delta variant of COVID, which was the most aggressive and the most dangerous. That was and that we could not get people out of the hospital, but we had people from all over the state. Well, why do we have people from all over the state? We had people from all over the state because in New Orleans, the Delta variant didn't really affect us because we had such high vaccination rates of 85 to 90% in New Orleans, right, for COVID. But the rest of the state had 15 to 20 to 30 to 40% vaccination rates. So once one hospital in Alexandria got full, then the next hospital in Lafayette would get full, and then it would come all the way down to New Orleans. And now we were taking care of people from the entirety of the state, and it massively overwhelmed us. Massively. The burnout.
I remember that.
Physicians.
I remember one of the things, and actually from shout out to Noise Filter, I had sort of learned about this phenomenon of basically hospital capacity rates and sort of
ventilatory capacity rates. There's only X amount of ventilators.
There were canceling procedures. I totally remember that.
Yes.
And my wife had to get a procedure during that time, and it was very touch and go. They had to cancel it 3 times because of this, and because of it was I don't know if COVID could have been entirely preventable or anything like that. It could have definitely been handled in a way that had mitigated the situation a lot better. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But like the fact that we got to the point that it was that really sort of put the entire system under stress and essentially made it so that that the hospital system was put basically completely underwater.
Yeah.
And that was one, like, imagine that now, because that was one period of time. Essentially, we recovered from that. Moving forward, there is no recovery. Once these hospitals close, remember, these hospitals, well, first of all, right now, the number one employer, the number one entity that provides the highest amount of employment in the U.S. is the healthcare industry. And that is actually with every rural city or township or county or parish or whatever, the number one employer, if there is a hospital system in that facility, certainly here, Ochsner and LCMC are the, without far and away in New Orleans, Ochsner and LCMC are the two major healthcare systems. They are far and away the major employees of Southern Louisiana. So once facilities start to close, that is going to be a domino effect. And let me just say one more point, and I promise you this is it, like, for right now. The last point, I think, is probably the one that's not talked about the most, and I think is most important, is this. The three of us right now, all three of us, are what's considered to be in the sandwich generation. Now, not necessarily the three of us, but where we would have children and aging parents, but we definitely have aging parents, right? We have aging parents. Now imagine also having children, right? And so these Gen Xers, our cohort, are in this so-called sandwich generation, because they're taking care of their parents and they're taking care of their children, and maybe even taking care of their grandchildren. Okay. But let me just point this out, because let me paint this picture, because this is the most important thing, because this is something that I know that we're going to feel very acutely. Let's say your parent. So let's say my dad is 86. He's not stable on his feet. I fought forever to get him into a cane. Now he's got a cane. He's a little bit more stable. But let's say he were to break a hip. God forbid, right? Let's say he breaks a hip.
It could happen.
He slips, falls, breaks a hip. He's of that age. He's unstable. He's hard-headed, Moroccan. He like slips, falls. Typical Middle Eastern, hard head.
Tough guy,
tough guy, right? Macho, right? And slips, falls, breaks a hip. Okay, so he goes to the hospital. He gets an operation. All that is pretty straightforward. But now he's got to learn how to walk again. Do you know where that learning to walk again happens? That happens in a place called a skilled nursing facility, SNFs, okay? That skilled nursing facility is exclusively 100% Medicaid. So when they're talking about people not being able to get nursing facilities, like they're not able to go, because there used to be a time where people would be in the hospital for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. They got all their services in the hospital. But as we became more corporatized as a healthcare system, we started to kind of pawn a lot of that stuff off to other, and then these new entities came up, which is where they are able to go to a skilled nursing facility. It's like a nursing home. In fact, they happen at nursing homes. The payment system is different because it's Medicaid, but this is where my father, Gabriel, would go for 2 weeks or 3 weeks to learn how to walk again. It's a place where he's getting his medications. There are nurses there. He's seen by a doctor maybe every other day. And it's where you would want to send your parent to get that care. If those homes close, guess what? Gabriel now is living with you.
You have to
have to deal with that on top of working 2 or 3 jobs, on top of taking care of your children and your grandchildren. And what if you say your father was a hardhead, instead of moving to New Orleans, he moved to Boise, Idaho, and now you got to deal with the fact that I have a father who's elderly who lives in Boise, Idaho, and now slips, falls, breaks his hip, and he can't get into a skilled nursing facility.
Yeah, like, I'm trying to work here. Yeah.
These are the issues. And just let's talk about now, let's say Gabriel needs to go to a nursing home. Like, that also is Medicaid. What if all those nursing homes are closing? Like, these are the downstream effects that are going to happen. And what happened today and what we saw today was like as somebody who lives in this space, I can't even begin to I mean, I can't. I've just been yelling at you for the last 25 minutes, but I can't. I can't express to you more the harm that we're gonna, and let's like the SNAP benefits that have been taking off. The increase in ICE. I mean, we can get all that later, but just talking about the Medicaid, $800 billion have been removed so that there is a massive wealth transfer to rich people. And if anything, that's what this country's always been about. Wow. This country's always been about wealth accumulation at the expense of other people. At first, it was at the expense of Native Americans. Then it was the expense of communities of color, Black people who were stolen from Africa, right? Kidnapped from Africa. And there has never been a reckoning. And all we're seeing now is the U.S. falling back.
Progression, yeah.
Yes, falling back into the dark ages. Because at least in the dark ages, they didn't know they were in the dark ages. We're in the dark ages. We know that we're in the dark ages, and we're intentionally getting there.
You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning, Comrade. And you mentioned that all of this about this entire sectors of our healthcare system, shutting down. But at the very least, at least no illegal quote unquote immigrant is going to be able to access Medicaid now, which is the sort of like justification that Republicans have been using for these just massive cuts.
Jeff, here's a conversation I've been having to have with my undocumented brothers and sisters who are who have HIV, who live with HIV.
Yeah, they're so screwed.
I'm gonna tell you the conversations I've been having for the last couple of months.
Because obviously these things cannot be transferred from one nationality or ethnic group or whatever to another. That's how it just can't be done.
Yeah. So, all right. So the Rolls Royce of HIV medications is something called Biktarvy. Okay. All right. And it is the Rolls Royce. If my wife had HIV, if I had HIV, if my dad had HIV, my mother-in-law had HIV, this would be the medicine I would prescribe to them. There's a ton of them that are out there. Just Biktarvy is the gold standard. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So Biktarvy here in the U.S., depending on if you're uninsured or insured or whatever, can be anywhere between $2,500 to $5,000 a month. In Honduras,
is that
the equivalent is $5.
Okay, yeah, okay. Because of the way that American
because of what's called Medicare Part D. Medicare Part D was signed by George Bush, and essentially what Medicare Part D says is that the U.S. cannot negotiate with U.S. pharmaceutical companies, so they have to pay. You want to know why medicine is so expensive? Medicine is so expensive because you can get Biktarvy in Honduras for $5 a month, whereas here in the U.S. they charge $2,500 a month.
It's the same thing about insulin when people who go to Canada to get their insulin,
100%
nickels on the dollar, and it costs thousands of dollars in the States.
And this is why you had, there's a great documentary on wherever it is, whoever it is, but it's a great documentary about an Indian chemist who started. This guy's from India, and he's a chemist from India, and he just started basically stealing the. He's a chemist. Cool. What the medicine is. It's the chemical compound is right there. If you're a chemist, you know how to get to the chemical compound. You just don't do it because it's got a patent on it. Well, this guy's like, I've got millions of Indians that are dying a year of HIV. I'm going to break this patent and go ahead and come after me. And so India and Brazil are some of the, have been making some of the cheapest, and in Thailand.
I'm going to get you started too, because this also reminds me of when during COVID, the mRNA was the mRNA vaccine, which was sort of like open source developed, at least at the front end, and who decides to ride in on his white horse and decide to tell all the muckety mucks in Congress that we actually need to make this we need to close this up and privatize it. But who?
Was that
Who does it?
Biden or no?
Bill
It was
Gates. Our buddy Bill Gates.
Yeah. It is. I mean, again, we live in a hyper capitalist society
with 3 corporations in a trench coat that pretending to be a country.
And if anything, if there's any good news that could be taken about what happened with something like today, is that like the 3 of us are hyper aware of this. Certainly, the audience is listening to this,
and we need
they're hyper aware of this.
Possible.
But the rest of the U.S. is going to start experiencing it when they go to the pharmacy and they realize that they've been cut from their Medicaid and they can't get their insulin. Then they're going to show up in the ER. Then the ERs are going to start getting full. Then they're going to shift those people onto the hospital floors where I work. Right, I'm an internist, infectious disease doctor. We're just not going to be able to take the capacity. And this is why I'm predicting that they're going to have to break EMTALA. They're going to have to say EMTALA can't be a thing anymore because hospitals are just going to have to start turning people away. There's a legal way of doing it. They call themselves on diversion. And when you're on diversion, that's your legal way of escaping from EMTALA. But we are entering new uncharted territories. Again, we haven't even gotten into SNAP. We haven't even gotten to ICE. We haven't even gotten into all the fact that he doesn't have to follow the Supreme Court rulings or other lower court rulings and all that stuff. Just focusing on Medicaid. Yeah. The fact that Medicaid. Oh, and then here's another thing, and I don't quite understand how this works, and maybe you guys know a little better. But because of the way Medicare payments and these PAYGO works, that if Medicaid gets cut, then to a large degree, Medicare will also get cut. And they snuck that in, again, as another evil genius way of being able to get at Medicare without ever saying they were getting at Medicare. But
I don't know anything about that part, but wow, that's not surprising. But yeah, it's one of those dark things that just keeps popping up where they're just coming at the entire idea of public good, public health, and honestly access for people who aren't super wealthy. This is a glass the poor, kill the poor bill that just went through Congress. Kill the poor, kill the immigrants, get rid of them. It is a separation of wealthy millions and billionaires from everybody else. They get everything, and workers get nothing.
And another thing that this bill did is it also is going to generate a lot more money that goes into private detention centers, right? Like these guys are getting $240 or
Auschwitz is great.
$240 a day per person, right? Like when you do the math, and especially like a place like the place in Florida, Alligator Auschwitz, there's no security that is needed, right? And also, what happens when a hurricane comes through? You saw there was a mild tropical storm yesterday or the day before, and it flooded. And for the 3 of us that are used to flooding, a big hurricane comes through, those are just tense. Like the inhumanity of it is insane.
You're in a cage in a flood.
So in a cage. I'll go further than that. There's been think pieces done about how obviously it's like a good 2 hours to a hospital by drive. So this is on purpose. This is a death camp. Yeah. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about a death camp in the United States of America. It crept in through Guantanamo because Obama didn't want to turn the page, and now here we are at the end of the empire.
Yep.
And again, this I do obviously want to focus and dial in on how evil the Republicans are and all that other stuff, but the Democrats are probably as much to blame for this than anyone else. I mean, we were just talking about prior to pressing the button and hopping on the air about how, when you have this bill, which the Democrats could have made a huge public fight, almost nobody who doesn't who's not a junkie at junkie level of, paying attention to this stuff knows about it. And we had basically a social democrat win a mayoral race in New York the other day, and you have this bill going through Congress at the same time. And what does Kirsten Gillibrand decide to focus on? She decides to talk about how anti-Semitic and how much Zoran Mamdani hates Jewish people or whatever, and go on the Brian Lehrer show and try and take him down, because that is quite frankly, for elite Democrats, a much bigger fish to fry than actually caring if their own constituents are going to get lose their SNAP benefits, lose their Medicaid, the destruction of our healthcare system, all the horrible things that are coming along with this. They're supposed to be against it or whatever, sure. But like, it also reminds me of, do you remember when Joe Biden had just gotten elected president and they had decided they were going to pass a voter rights bill, right? The Democrats had, and they gotten it through, I believe, the House because they had a majority in there, and it got stuck in the Senate. And instead of focusing on making a public case for that, they decided that, Ilhan Omar had said like something on a tweet.
The Benjamins.
About, it's all about
the Benjamins. Yeah.
And deciding to make a censure vote happen at the exact same time as their big voting rights bill, and they stepped over that entire public thing and made their own internal drama. The Democrats are, as like, the idea of them being an opposition party, I wish there was even a controlled opposition party in the country, because a controlled opposition would actually have to attempt to keep up the kayfabe. The Democratic Party in this country, and structurally speaking, they're all there is. That's all there is to it. Ain't no alternative. But like, the Democratic Party in this country is literally just there at this point, and prove me otherwise, or whatever. They're just there to essentially maintain stability, clean up like a lot of the mess that the Republicans make, and put something of a more sort of like practical or professional face on the exact same policies. Or maybe dialing back a tiny little bit. Like if the Republicans go like, hey, let's kill Medicaid, and the Democrats will be like, oh no, our negotiating position isn't to keep Medicaid the same or even like expand Medicaid. It's to, let's just cut it less. It's literally just like assuming whatever the right-wing position is completely legitimate and just slightly watering it down. And when they see, they like it that way because they benefit from the system the exact same ways as the far right.
They get all the benefits of right-wing policy without any of the blame.
Right. And then when they do see somebody who like Zoran Mamdani or AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Jamal Bowman or Ilhan Omar, anybody who even sort of like purports to kind of challenge that even a little bit, even if it's not even in a like totally 100% like we're going to upturn an apple cart all the way type of way. I mean, none of those people do that. AOC plays ball. All of them play ball, at least to some extent. And, what do they do when that comes up? When Zoran Mamdani, who's running on freezing the rent and, free buses and, publicly owned grocery stores and things that would actually help working people, the Democrats have to just decide that, oh, actually, this guy's anti-Semitic. We must destroy him at all costs. That's the priority. That's what we have to do. That's what we have to focus on. We have to focus on that and not the fact that there is $800 million being cut from the healthcare system, not the fact that SNAP benefits are going to be cut and thrown away and people are going to starve and die, not the fact that ICE is going to, the Gestapo has essentially been not only funded to the level of, again, more than most militaries, but
it's not hyperbolic what you're saying.
I'm not being hyperbolic. I will stand by this.
No, I'm saying ICE is fun. ICE is got a bigger budget than the Russian military.
And that's not the problem. That's not the priority. That's not the thing you got worried about. The real problem is that guy in New York who just won the mayoral primary,
right,
who didn't denounce globalize the Intifada, which is something that he never actually said. That's what we need to focus on.
Right. Well, what this also shows is just what a farce, what a joke the Democratic Party is. And again, this is another thing that we're just seeing the slip showing. Like, we just now see who if there was, you remember the vote blue, no matter who, right? You remember that?
They're a brown guy in New York.
Happened all of a sudden? It's just, they are as broken. Listen, I can look at it. Yes, the Republicans are horrible. Okay, they are a terrorist organization. That's what they are, a terrorist organization right now. Like between blocking climate change, what now he wants to go back to clean coal, like getting rid of all like the clean energy shit stuff. Like that is just like. You're listening to 102.3 WHIV.
44.
Wow.
But no. But like you're right. Like all those lies. All those lies.
No, it's and what we're seeing with the Democratic Party, they're just like they're one step behind. I mean, they're not as bad. They are bad, but they're not as bad. But here's the bottom line.
My argument is that the role that the Democrats play in this is that they are enabling the Republicans, the right wing, the hard right, to do what they can, because when the right wing makes a big old mess, they don't change anything when it comes back around. Yeah. They just clean it up.
It's the ratchet.
Like, let's continue doing the same stuff. Y'all are just doing it too.
Right. Who like was it? All the Republican presidents, kind of increase the spending, and then it's the Democrats that just come in and
gives a crap about.
Right. Nobody actually gives a crap about. You're 100% correct. No. We've talked about this before, that the Democrats are just the Washington Generals. That's all they are. They're there because there just needs to be an opposing party. They're not a show. There's no true opposing party. But here's the best thing. You've got Mamdani brought out a higher degree of younger voters for primary, and also people who they've woken up. They recognize that they're not going to talk. If indeed the party, let's say you have somebody like an Eric Adams, or you have a Cuomo. Can you believe you had Clinton, one sexual assaulter, coming out to support another sexual assaulter? It was just this is what we're getting now. We're getting people coming out to support these horrific dinosaurs. And the Democratic Party is not recognizing that they need to go. And so, to a certain degree, not that I believe that the American Party from Musk is going to be, it's going to be terrible, obviously. But I like the idea that we're getting closer and closer to breaking out of this duopoly that we live in, and that we will be able to break into having more parties. I don't know if we'll actually see it, because the hold that they have on the Democratic and Republican parties, because in the end, who do they serve? Their donors, and their donors are the billionaires.
That would require a structural change to the American system. One that's right now, the way that the system operates, it's just Coke and Pepsi. So you might as well have one of them be good, because if there's not even a basic level of friction that takes place from Pepsi, if it's just let's just do lighter Coke or whatever, let's just do it not even hit the brakes. It's just basically easing off the gas a little bit. Yeah. Then you don't have a two-party system. You just have essentially two wings of a singular party that needs to be sort of separated at some point. And again, the only way that can happen politically in this country is through the system that we currently have, which is unfortunately the Democrats. And the only people that are in any kind of position to do that, again, politically, there's other avenues, but the AOC wing, the Tlaibs, the Omars, the Mamdanis, the people that are essentially DSA endorses.
Right. But also, let me ask you this. Let's just say Mamdani wins. Let's kind of dream with me here for a second, okay? Let's say Mamdani wins. Okay?
He's the front runner at this point.
Okay. All right, for the Democratic Party, but there's independents, but let's just say, yeah. Okay. Let's just say he wins. Mm-hmm. Do you not think that the entire the party apparatus is going to come down hard to crush him and to crush the whole system, so they can point to it and they'd be like, oh yeah, look what happens when a Democratic Socialist runs. They screw everything up,
They're gonna try.
That's what I always afraid, that if Bernie won, that would happen to him. Go ahead.
Here's the thing though. So my thing about that is, and you won't find anybody more black-pilled, more doomer-pilled than me. I'm actively trying to leave the country. I'm not kidding. But the thing about Mamdani, if you want to find some hope, honestly, it's that don't worry about what the Republican Party's doing because they're evil, they're gross. We're gonna have to like just try to materially survive their policies. But that the Democratic Party, and I mean like the machine wing of the Democratic Party, which is most of the Democratic Party, their power is waning so hard. So either like I do see an actual, if we don't have, you know, Bastille Day, an actual
Alligator Alcatraz Day.
Yeah, Alcatraz Day. I do see an actual either dirty break coming or just a new party because their power is gone. The thing about Mondani, like, yeah, they can
30%.
They can try to come down on Mondani all they want, but they already threw their like, you know, excuse like pun. It's not a pun, but like association. They already threw their nuke at him, which was anti-Semitism, and it made Christian Gillibrand had to apologize.
Did she really? I did not.
Yes.
I did not.
People flooded her office.
Did she really?
So she had to apologize for being a racist piece of garbage to that man.
I did not know
so
that.
Their power is waning, man. They don't have a lot of gas left in the tank. When anti-Semitism, they are one note. When anti-Semitism won't work, and you can't just be outwardly racist to people, they really don't know what to do at this point. They'll come up with something else for sure, but. As of right now, they're gobsmacked.
That nuke that you mentioned, the anti-Semitism nuke, like it has been sort of nerfed so much to the point that even AIPAC doesn't use that nuke.
Yeah, anymore. They don't even talk about Israel.
Because Israel is toxic.
Right. I mean,
what does AIPAC do? What does AIPAC do? They
lobby on behalf of Israel.
Oh no. Like, what is their strategy? Is my point. Their strategy isn't to say, oh, this is an anti-Semite or whatever. Like that's what like a lot of these blunt instruments, these like Eric Adams's and Kirsten Gillibrands and like Cuomo's or whatever are going to do is they're going to use that. AIPAC has gotten actually more sophisticated by saying like, oh, they're challenging their Democrats' record as they like, oh, this is a bad Democrat, as opposed they're supporting Trump by de facto, not getting with the Democrat or the Biden program. That's what they did. That's how they got Bowman. Or that's one of the ways they got Bowman, and also just like splashing $1 bazillion.
Well, also let me just say that when you have bands like Kneecap and Bob Dylan, like just doing what they did, like
they're losing the culture war.
They like when you just have nothing but kids, young people, like that. It kind of reminds me, like the moment we're in right now, kind of sort of reminds me what happened when Luigi shot the CEO.
Yeah.
Right when you had the elite being like, oh. You know, not only were they shocked at the shooting, but I think they were more shocked at the response of the collective yawn. You know, cool. You know, right.
Any more of them CEOs?
Yeah, right. Like, you know, like, sorry, my thoughts and prayers are on hold for a prior authorization, you know, or some of those great comments that were made.
I do think that and there's another point, and I think this is also super important because if you look at what Democrats are doing and the takeaways that they're having from the Zoran campaign in New York, they are focusing on exactly the wrong thing as you would expect them to do, right?
Yes,
they're focusing on the fact that he had a very strong video communications social media game. They're focusing on the fact that he is a extremely charismatic and extremely talented individual. They're focusing on the fact that like they're focusing on essentially the window dressing, and none of that would have mattered. None of that slick social media anything would have mattered if there wasn't a working class program at the heart of it. And that is the one thing that the Democratic Party cannot ever give. And they never will. And that's why when you have these like Olivia Giulianas of the world who think they can like come in or the Harry Sissons or whatever, like they've been trying to do that stuff. They've been trying to have
abundance garbage.
Yeah, they're trying to have their social media campaigns. They're trying to drive their like narratives. They're trying to dominate the airwaves. It's not the fact. Like the problem isn't the fact that there's no like Democrat social Joe Rogan or whatever the hell. That's not the problem. The problem is that their message is something that is deeply and profoundly unappealing to anybody who's not Matt Iglesias.
Yeah.
Like that is the problem. That is why nobody likes them. That is why everybody hates the Democrats, because they run a program for elite liberals from large cities who are extremely wealthy. They run a program that is designed for essentially, and I hate to be this reductive, the set of people that went to college and they despise the set of people that didn't go to college.
Right.
Straight up.
The working
Absolutely.
class.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, let me ask you this. Why did there were several unions that actually backed Cuomo, and then as soon as Mondani worked, they immediately turned around and backed Zoran? Like, what was the situation there?
If they had their fingers in the air, they thought Cuomo was the safe bet. They went along with it, and they were wrong. And as soon as they figured that out, they snapped into line. Like a lot of unions' political departments, and I say this pretty confidently, there are exceptions. However, like a lot of unions' political departments simply don't want to piss off the people that are running the show.
I understand.
And quite frankly, they bet on.
Did they not think like they couldn't see the energy that Mamdani was like Cuomo was like calling it in? Like
I will say this, especially some of the larger unions, and especially in New York, like there is a political machine that they are a part of, and also like a lot of union leaders, including one that I used to work for, they're out of touch. They're out of touch with actual people. And, they've probably seen cases where, candidates have gotten, crazy amounts of volunteers and they've gotten creamed as well. And the game has obviously changed since then. It's a different calculus. And quite frankly, the ones that look good coming out of all of this are DC 37, which is the AFSCME local, the UAW, and a couple of Teamsters locals. But I do want to say this too really quickly, and I know we're running out of time. You can also see, because I mentioned the sort of like myopicness of union leaders, just this week, and actually it was a couple of weeks ago, Randy Weingarten, who's the president of the American Federation of Teachers, and Lee Saunders, who is the president of was it AFSCME?
AFSCME, yeah.
They both resigned from their positions as like DNC people. Both of them extremely dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, and their sort of like reasoning behind stepping down was the fact that there was and these are again dyed-in-the-wool Democrats. Like they essentially said, and Randy Weingarten went on the Majority Report this week and said this to Sam Cedar. It's definitely worth going back and checking out that interview. But they essentially said that the establishment of the Democratic Party stood in the way of new leadership, including, and again, David Hogg does not have my politics.
We talked about this about David Hogg last time we were on.
I have a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with him on, probably, but like, it doesn't really matter because at the very least, he's somebody who is new and young and exciting in a new generation or whatever, right? And right now, you don't even have that being allowed. You can't even have the next generation of people who agree with you take over. How can you have a next generation of people who don't agree with you take over? So what is essentially going to happen? The only way this ever does get fixed before we slide into the, Jaws teeth of fascism is there needs to be a complete and utter turning over of the table of that political establishment, of that party system. And, at least some of these, very politically savvy union leaders like Randy Weingarten, somebody who I've been endlessly critical of for many, many years. I was a member of American Federation of Teachers for 8 years. She knows which way the wind is blowing, and she's actually making a very smart, savvy move. And I think that that is just another sort of another strike against the losers that are basically running this opposition, quote unquote, to fascism, the Weimar Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know we need to go. I just want to say today was a really, really rough day. We officially made a U-turn from what happened in the 60s when LBJ signed kind of like help to kind of usher in a great society, which was an extension of what happened in the 30s as well. Like what we are doing today, we are returning back to the dark ages, but it's the dark ages, and it's just mind-boggling, and we're going to see a lot of human suffering.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I say, okay, cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We're gonna go out on a high note with that one, but thanks for listening. You can listen to us every we're still on Saturdays, right?
Still on Saturdays. It's going to be changing soon.
Saturdays at 10 a.m. on WHIV. You can also check us out on this space, where you can also find Noise Filter now. Noise Filter on this space. And actually, I'm going to be live on this space this week because I'm off on Tuesday. So if you're listening now and if you check out this space, I'm going to be live on Tuesday. So check it out. Thanks to everybody for listening. We love you. Bye-bye.
Peace out.
Everybody. Bye.
Peace out.
Hold up on